Okay, do I have everything I need for this video? I think I do. Half my head is still shaved, a axe choker with Viking runes, Yggdrasil, I got my roots. Yeah, okay, I can make the video that I was always destined to make. What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit. Today, by patron request, a Viking-themed rogue. Who knew my whole brand was going to come into question on this one? If you're liking what you see, and remember to like, subscribe, ding the bell, stay caught up on all your stuff. Remember, Patreon at any tier gets you a Google Sheet with this and a billion other builds and can help you essentially throw a bunch of spears at people for sneak attack damage, which is dope, but we're not worried about that right now. For now, let's dive in. Okie doke. So, Vikings, a term loosely applied to Scandinavian individuals who traveled the world in ostensibly very large canoes, gathering resources up to and including killing people for those resources because the world in which they come from can't exactly grow crops there. They would go on to settle other parts of the world, be the subject of a lot of video games and media, and more or less be my entire aesthetic. Shout out to Thor Hates Racists for a really cool flag that I bought not terribly long after the Capitol riots. I'm definitely that meme of the white dude who hit his 20s, and you can go 4 ways. I chose the Viking way. But building this in 2nd edition on the rogue shell makes a very broad and difficult to paint picture that much easier because Viking is, okay, it's an archetype and we're kind of using it, not a class, but ostensibly a job that everyone can do. For a long time, I was like, okay, no, let's strictly build an aquatic-based combatant, something like an Undyne or an Uruxi who will be very good at holding their breath, swimming, and stabbing you from the water. I thought about playing with the vehicle stuff from Guns and Gears to be real good at piloting a longship, struggle real hard to figure out how to work a great axe or a great sword into the Viking aesthetic. Not that that's necessarily like historically accurate, but for the memes, right? What I landed on was borrowing a little bit of suggestion from the request, a hatchet being a ranged attack and therefore something that qualified for sneak attack, and with sneak attack being optional. So I decided to lean into thrown weapons, something that's versatile, something that's modal, someone who you could expect to load up on the longship, go hundreds of miles across the sea, be ready to fight on the other side, and someone who, because you're traveling the goddamn world, would pick up a lot of stuff between here and there. Said all that to say, today we're rolling up a ruffian rogue. I think this is the first time I've built a ruffian formally on the channel. This is the strength-based one, the one that can do sneak attack damage with any simple weapon and gets critical specialization from jump against flat-footed targets as long as their weapon's damage die is no larger than a d8 after applying random buffs and things. As an honorable mention, I did not include it in the video, but I really thought about a cleric dedication for deadly simplicity to make the weapon I think we'll be using the most in combat that much shinier, ultimately with the sheer amount of d6 being thrown around. I don't think we necessarily need it, but we're gonna run with that old Viking staple, the spear. Its bulk is 1, it does a d6 of piercing damage. The spear also has the thrown 20-foot, which helps bring in that versatility. It's a big one-handed weapon that when we need to, we can huck up to 4 squares away. I do think you will want to carry an agile weapon in the offhand. What that happens to be, I mostly leave up to y'all. The nature of Pathfinder 2nd edition is, especially in lower levels, you run into things like skeletons that have a vulnerability to bludgeoning, so carry a club to huck at them. Something with a vulnerability to slashing, carry a dagger. Throwing knives are great too. These are all of very light bulk, and we're going to have a real high strength score, so you should be able to just carry all of these on your person. Drawing them out, easy peasy. For our ancestry today, the human tiefling will be our choice. We'll talk more about why later. And for our background, I think the most flavorful of the rare ones we can take. In fact, for an individual who's presumably traveled all over the place, Tall Tale. The stories of the implacable warrior who's thrown a spear through 5 monsters at once, or who lifted something very heavy with one hand, or they go on and on. It certainly fits for the raiding sailor motif as much as it does for a traveling gunslinger. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be to con or chaw, one is free. You are trained in performance, which is ironically more important for us than you would think. You gain impressive performance. You can gain the connection skill feat later without being expert in society or having courtly graces. This represents less traditional social connections and more the way your legend has spread. Or again, like, this is definitely a character who reasonably could have a friend in every city. It's like me, but my longship is a YouTube channel. Huh. This is hitting much closer to home than I thought it would. Nice. For our starting ability scores, we are a ranged marshal who also wants to hit you up close and personal, and whose weapon is doing 100% strength damage, so it looks real wonky. A strength of 16, dex of 16, con of 14, int of 10, whiz of 12, and charisma of 10. You could put that extra stat in any of your mental abilities. Ultimately, I chose wisdom because I don't want to fail will saves, but more intelligence for even more trained skills from jump and being better at int-based skills, or more charisma to be better at the performance that we're shoehorning in, also certainly have a lot of value. For our class feats out the gate today at level 1, Twin Feint. For 2 actions when you are wielding 2 melee weapons, each in a different hand, make 1 strike with each of them, both at the same target. The target is automatically -2 against the attack that will have a -4 when you swing in with your, again, insert name of agile weapon with a thrown range here, or like probably also carry a short sword. Weird that the sax hasn't been statted yet like it was in 1E. 100% would be carrying one if it was, but we can reflavor a short sword, it's fine. The 5e players have been doing that for years. The map is applied normally. It's just a way to get flat-footed when you don't have flat-footed. Easy peasy. Brutal beating at level 2. When we crit and deal damage, our targets are frightened 1. Easy enough, right? Why would you not? We want to make them flat-footed, we want to be flanking. More debuffs, more good. Strong arm at level 4. When you strike with a thrown weapon, its range increment increases 10 feet. This means we can throw our spears as far as we're throwing javelins, and our daggers a little farther as well. This helps make sure that we don't have to throw into our second range increment, make steps and strides, though we will be relatively fast, so striding into position doesn't ultimately hurt us. Options is the name of the game here. This just expands that proverbial burst around your character's token in Roll20 a couple of extra squares. It gets better with some archetype things. Oh, by the way, we're of course using free archetype for this video and every 2nd edition video from here forward. Why? Well, follow this card. Next up, gang up. Any enemy is flat-footed against you due to flanking as long as an enemy is within reach of both you and an ally. I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume someone else in the party is playing a melee-based character. This just, again, makes it easier for us to hit, makes it easier for us to deal sneak attack damage, makes it easier to remove the bad things from the board before they hurt us. As does Opportune Backstab, our first reaction. When a creature within our melee reach is hit by a melee attack from one of our allies, we get to make a strike against the triggering creature, who will almost certainly be flat-footed to us, making it easier for us to jam a spear through them. Speaking of debuffs, the sneak attack as a combat trick comes to the fore for us in the form of vicious debilitations. When we use our debilitating strike, that free action when we deal sneak attack damage, we can add either the target becomes clumsy 1, or I think the one we want to do the most, the target gains weakness 5 to your choice of bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. Imagine stabbing someone in the back with a spear, then giving them weakness to piercing damage. Communicate with your party. Let them know that you're taking this and your weapons are mostly doing piercing damage. I definitely envision a universe where we're dual wielding spears a lot of the time in the mid-late game. Get your other marshals to take piercing weapons if they can, or something with versatile piercing, because the value on a weakness to literally just the type of damage before elements or any other dumbness is very, very exponential based on the amount of people who can take advantage of it. Next reaction, Reactive Interference. Mileage may vary, but I'm guessing there are enough monsters, at least with Attack of Opportunity printed at this point, that we would like to take this. When an enemy begins to use a reaction, if the triggering creature's level is equal to or lower than yours, the reaction is disrupted. Most things will only have the one reaction. A lot of their reactions are really good. And even if that's just like the ranger's wolf needs to back off a little bit, This prevents the wolf from getting backstabbed when it tries to do so. If the triggering creature's level is higher than yours, the boss's generally, you must make an attack roll against its AC. On a success, reaction disrupted. We enable our friends to do more damage to things. We'd also like to make sure they stay standing, so there you go. A very random one at level 14. I'm noticing a lot of the late game rogue feats either are just kind of incompatible with what we're trying to do, or not so great IMO, so I'm often reaching from like back class feats as I go forward. If we could archetype into something else here, I would, but more on that in a sec. Spring from the shadows. For one action, stride up to your speed. You must end your movement next to an enemy you're hidden from or undetected by. This is probably your first thing that you're doing in initiative, assuming you had the chance to hide beforehand, roll for stealth, so on and so forth. You then strike the enemy you remain hidden or undetected by that creature until after you strike. You also get to 2-for-1 the action economy, which is value in and of itself. Next, defensive roll. Once per 10 minutes, if you would drop to 0 HP, you take half damage from the triggering attack. Will this always save you? No. If you're running around at single digits and somebody mollywops you for like 75 damage, that probably sucked. But it doesn't burn our action economy. Like I said, in the feats department, we're feeling pretty good right now. This is just a little extra insurance. Next, preparation. For one action, you get one additional reaction, which you can use before the beginning of your next turn for any rogue reaction. Opportune backstab and reactive interference upped for one more. What a world it is where you can opportune backstab the same bad guy who you have flat-footed because of gang up, and you're throwing more sneak attack damage, the second of which they presumably have vulnerability to. And by this point we have double debilitations, so further debuffs as well. Speaking of which, capstone, let's make our debilitations last for a minute instead of until the end of your next turn with enduring debilitations, because this is gross. On the archetype side, first things first, wild as hell that we're taking this, but here we are, the juggler dedication. Oh, like I said, we've traveled all over the world. We've seen a lot of things, including the circus at some point. This makes us trained in yet another skill because we're trained in performance. This also grants us the juggle skill feat. For one action, you start to juggle a single stored item, an item you were carrying, or unattended item within your reach. The item must be of light or negligible bulk, so like daggers at the beginning, eventually get your spears made of mithril so you can juggle them. That's a weird mental image, but whatever. You juggle the item until the end of your next turn, unless you use this feat again the next turn to keep going. While you are juggling, you can use this action again to add another item to the juggle, which must meet all the same requirements. You can juggle a number of items equal to one more the number of hands you're using to juggle, so generally speaking 2 items. You can also use this action to continue juggling as long as you are not fatigued. When you do, you continue to juggle until the end of your next turn. If you do not continue juggling by the end of your turn, you cease juggling and drop all the items. It's weird that there's not a rider in here somewhere for if you're only juggling one thing, can I just grab it? I guess you have to interact to like pick up the item. You become fatigued if you do this for 10 minutes over the course of an hour. As long as you're juggling fewer than your maximum number of items, you have a free hand. So theoretically, we could walk up to a door juggling a dagger, open it with our free hand, have a spear on the other side to stab someone. You can wield the weapons you're juggling, but not shields, as long as they're one-handed. Other things about spells that don't matter to us. Basically, this lets us have an extra round in the proverbial chamber for throwing weapon shenanigans, and it gives us other stuff later on. We'll next take Focus Juggler. As a free action, you continue juggling without having to burn that extra action, and can add an extra weapon up there if you really need to just huck 3 daggers. Quick Juggler lets us put 2 items up in the quiver. Again, this should keep us loaded until later magic things. We said all that to say at level 8, we're taking Lobbed Attack. If you're juggling a thrown weapon for one action, make a thrown range strike with the weapon using its normal range increment. It doesn't trigger reactions, and if the target has never seen you use this feat before, the target is flat-footed. This is a very good way to, once per combat, when you really need to give someone down the road a vulnerability to the type of damage your champion is doing, or you just want to sneak attack a pesky threat you can't get at, this will do it. One of the reasons we're playing a human is for multi-talented, and we'll take the Barbarian dedication at 9th, because Rage helps us get a little more damage on a smaller damage dice. Then Furious Finish for another mode in the tank, and a massive circumstance bonus to damage if you have the chance to, just run up and jam a spear into somebody. Instinct ability comes next. I chose the Superstition Instinct because I'm kind of tired of taking Dragon forever. The +2 status bonus to all saves against magic helps shore up our not so great will save, and again, like I'm assuming people are hucking magic at us. By the time we have a hold of this, a lot of creatures at the very least have like innate spells. So I'm assuming we still get our extra rage damage, and free HP once every 10 minutes kind of translates to once every other combat-ish. It just seems pretty darn good. Worth the our allies can't cast magic on us. In the absolute worst case, again, talk to your party, get someone to play an alchemist, or like spend some money on potions for yourself. In the absolute worst case, I'm assuming an ally casting magic on you when you're unconscious or dead can be, it's sort of cheesy, but technically you weren't aware of it. Maybe they don't know about your unwillingness. It's at least a free one-time get resurrected. Hey, don't do that again. Okay, got it. Then you just, should you die a second time, talk to the local priest and get him to do it. And it's really convoluted, and we're lying to this character a lot, but sucks to suck. Attack of opportunity from the barbarian side, since we now have extra reactions. Why not also, if someone dares do a manipulate action in our face, why not stab them? Then the last archetype we're going to talk about today, you knew you'd see it, the Viking dedication. Gets us trained in sailing lore. Here's hoping by level 16 that's useful. While moving through water using your land speed, you ignore difficult terrain resulting from running through the beaches or the bogs or what have you. Athletics checks to swim automatically get you critical successes. Mostly we're just here for hurling charge. For 2 actions, make a ranged strike with a thrown weapon that's already in your hand, stride, and then interact to draw another weapon. If you're raging, you can get your rage damage with your thrown weapon. You normally can't without a couple more shenanigans, but it's fine. By level 18, the I'm going to throw something at you isn't necessarily our main mode of combat so much as when we need to make somebody flat-footed and put a debuff on them. If you want to use ranged weapons all the time, grab Raging Thrower over Furious Finish. I'm just, again, assuming by level 18 this is just some kind of extra tech and not our main form of combat. Partially because next we're going to grab Come and Get Me. For 1 action, you're flat-footed, damage rolls against you have a +2 circumstance bonus. If a creature hits you, it's flat-footed to you until the end of your next turn, which means we get to beat the crap out of them and get a bunch of sneak attack. Also, if you hit it, you get temp HP equal to your con mod or double on a critical hit, which lasts until the end of your rage. For our ancestry feats out the gate, we will be grabbing the Shackleborn lineage for the Tiefling. Who'd have thunk it that the Ulfin coming back from raiding somewhere would pick up some kid from Nidal who's ready to head out, and now there's this dude with too many piercings and a spear. Wow. I've really hit myself on the head, haven't I? It grabs us fast recovery, which means we gain more HP from resting. Fort saves against ongoing diseases or poisons are reduced by 2. Drain condition goes down by 2 when we rest. Extra attack, real good. Nimble Hooves, weird for the Velstrak Blooded, but that's the next one, to increase our speed from 25 to 30. Again, in low level play, it will probably matter a lot more to stride a little bit farther to make sure people are in thrown weapon range, or at the very least, that extra 5 feet to cross the battlefield and get a flank. Multi-talented at 9th for the Barbarian dedication. Then, Stubborn Persistence. When you would become fatigued, attempt a DC 17 flat check. On a success, you aren't fatigued. If the fatigue condition is because you've been mainlining caffeine and running around burning villages forever, then, like, maybe take a nap. But this will help us get past, Gods forbid, we have to juggle for an hour. I don't know why that happened, but here we are. The Rage debuff, the Furious Finish debuff, so on and so forth. Then, lastly, Bounce Back. When you lose the dying condition, don't increase the value of your wounded condition once per day. Why did I take this? Because all of the cool late game tiefling feats that aren't just slap wings on yourself, which would take 2 feats to be effective, make you cast spells. So, whoops. Then for the general feats, it's Incredible Initiative, Toughness, Die Hard, Canny Acumen for a Fortitude save, and True Perception. For our key items, obviously a strength-based apex item of any sort looks really good on us to make us better at stabbing people. The Belt of Good Health, an invested item which we can cheat, increases our max and current HP by 4, just don't take the thing off. Probably my favorite magic item that exists right now. I just keep buying it because why the hell wouldn't you? Again, we want to make all of our spears from mithril to decrease their bulk by 1 to make them qualified to juggle. If you're really liking throwing daggers and things, the returning rune will cause the thrown weapon to fly back to your hand to then be rejuggled, used to stab someone, so on and so forth. Fortunately, the 2 coolest magic spears that exist in 2nd edition currently already have this. First, the Fulminating Spear, a +1 striking returning spear which we can make glow like a torch sometimes, not as the light spell, so we get to cheat it. More importantly, for 2 actions, once per day, you touch the ruby, you huck the spear at a square 20 feet farther than normal range increment. When the spear lands, it detonates, dealing 66 fire damage to all creatures in a 10-foot emanation, and then it comes back in one piece to your hand. Really good for setting buildings on fire when we're raiding towns to take their silver, and also lets us have Fireball without being Fireball at all. Eventually this DC will fall off and you'll want to switch to something else, sure, of course. Till then, nobody's gonna see this coming if they don't know how you fight, so seems like real good tech. The Gluttonous Spear, a +1 striking returning spear, wrapped in greasy hide. On a crit, makes the target enfeebled 1 for a minute and you get temp HP. Not bad, though a spear with a head that resembles a thick clawed finger, I have to question the aerodynamics of it, but I shouldn't think about it too hard. Give them a debuff, give you HP, give them a debuff that probably lasts the rest of their life if we're honest. But this build wants to be very versatile, very modal, very debuffy, but also capable of, when you need to just put the hurt down, doing so. There are a myriad conditions we can throw around it, folks. Hell, even minus 10-foot status penalty to speeds plus weakness to piercing 5. Probably has a lot more really good versatility than you think. Clumsy 1, enfeebled 1. Essentially nukes the entire top half of the ability scores when we consider that you've also done damage and have hit their con. Tools in the toolbox mean we can always do whatever we need, whenever we need it. No matter what comes around the next corner, what's on the next horizon, what's over the next beach, which leans really hard into the spirit of 2nd edition if we're honest. But that's all the time I have for today. What do y'all think? Are we rolling this up? How much more Viking could I have made this? Let me know down in the comments. For now, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.